Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary, direct from our newsroom assignment desk, otherwise known as my Compost Heap. Let's see what stories are working on this hour. Well, they say the patient is cold blue, the patient being democracy in other parts of the country where fascism is spreading this week, but not in Connecticut. It's the opposite. Democracy in New Haven and Connecticut is thriving, and I'll tell you why. We have an election day, Tuesday, November 8th, where there are 10, in New Haven we're voting for 10 different candidates, plus a ballot option for a question for early voting that will start to bring our voting laws to be as democratic as Georgia's. And we have 6 different parties having candidates from all over the ideological spectrum, plus unaffiliated and writing candidates. So lots of choices, and they're interesting choices. At WNHH, our radio station, I got to sit for dozens of hours with people running for all these offices, treasurer, secretary of state, governor, a state senator, from all these parties, and they're really interesting. They said that civic discourse is dead. We talked about tough issues about budget, criminal justice that we had different views on, and it was so civil and interesting, with just a few exceptions where you say, what planet they're from. These are all interesting, thoughtful people. In fact, I'm pretty much sure I'm voting on 6 different lines on election day. Ready for democracy. Now, if we can get ranked choice voting, we could take it to another level. Democracy isn't just about voting, it's about ironing out our differences and what we want for society together over time. It's messy, it takes time, but it sometimes has better results. Like this week, we started a community crisis team where we're sending out teams of social workers and people with lived experience with addiction, homelessness, mental health problems to work with cops, and then eventually, in 10% of the time, take 911 calls instead of cops for people who need that kind of help from people trained to deal with those problems, rather than locking them up and sending cops to the same problem they can't fix over and over again. It took us extra time because we worked it out with what the community wanted us to do when we did our version of this community crisis team. We wanted to have a community oversight board, look at how it worked out to make sure we can tweak it, and that we can look at the root problems that have these calls keep coming in. Hooray for artists and democracy. If you're an artist, you're going to have new apartments you can move into at a community place in Fair Haven. The Strong School has been empty there for years. A lot of times the city would have a plan of someone to bring in, the neighbors who are invested, and they fought about it. We didn't get anyone, but now we do. We had a years-long process where everyone came together, and now they chose a developer they all believe in with a plan that can work for 58 affordable housing apartments, artist community, public gathering space, and spray paint that we'll call art. Hooray for democracy. Unions thrive in democracy, getting unions to represent workers. Since 1992, the graduate student employees at Yale tried to form a union. Their successors have tried back and forth, and they made the argument democratically. They handed out cards to 3,000 of their workers who signed cards wanting a union. Now there'll be an election for a union. We've been there once before where they had an election, and Yale and the teachers disagreed about what was the democratic definition of what would really represent workers and how you divide up the bargaining units. They had a partial election where each side won some, that Donald Trump named anti-labor people to the National Labor Relations Board. So Yale was able to kill it by saying, well, appeal there, and the union knew they wouldn't get a fair hearing. But now, because of a different president, there's more of a mix of people in the National Labor Relations Board, so there'll be a new election. Elections have consequences. And Soto's reporting, there is no democracy, no freedom of speech and conversation without a thriving, independent, nonprofit, public interest local press. I feel so lucky I get to work with one, the New Haven Independent. There are now hundreds of them around the country that have popped up in recent years, and we're all doing something this month called News Match. We exist because you support us, thank you. And if you give a donation through News Match, you can see your donation doubled to keep us alive. And I feel so lucky I get to work for a great editor. I have a new editor at the New Haven Independent, Tom Breen. He's worked his way up through the site, and he, besides being a wonderful human being and a wonderful editor, not always the same, he's a millennial. And it's about time millennials take over because they're more than ready. That's politics, government, everywhere, media. Here's my message to my fellow boomers and those octogenarians clinging to throw power. It's time to hand over the mic. Until next time, this is the New Haven Independent Vlog News Summary. And remember, always pick up your trash.